I think it goes back to, when I was a little kid, I was really into, punk rock. I have the book Please Kill Me right behind me, I think. And, it was just I was a little, a seventh and eighth grade little punker. I mean, I lived right up the street from the Cuckoo's Nest. And I'd go down to Balboa when I was a kid, and the mods and the punks used to fight. And there was guys with shaved heads, and yeah, of course, that had a little bit of an influence on in me. And then when I went to school down in San Diego, I remember somehow, somewhere, we I ran into a couple skinheads, and I thought that was, a very compelling sort of character deep in my subconscious, of course, because I didn't know I wanted to be a writer yet. And then, later on, when I saw Romper Stomper and I put everything together, and a lot of the Rodney King stuff was going on at the time, and I just said that I wanted to write. Obviously, I was a big fan of Mississippi Burning, but those characters didn't really apply to what I had witnessed and what I had seen as a kid and what I was of this subculture that was out there. And I just decided to take a crack at it. And I knew that I wanted to make my guys smart. And one thing that I wanted to do is I just wanted people to question their own. That's what I try and do whenever I write something, is question whether or not they like this guy or not. And if they don't, do they have the potential to like? Obviously you don't like Derek Vineyard, you know in some of the stuff that he does, obviously, but at the end you're rooting for him. And so those are the kind of things, those big giant character arcs that really sort of, like to challenge me. And when I realized, okay, I mean, does it get any bigger of a character arc than a guy who's a skinhead who absolves himself as his own hatred and bigotry? I don't think so. It's right up there. The first thing I obviously came up with in my head was Derek, okay, and who he was, sort of, and how, I didn't know how I was going to get there. And then I came up with the opening scene of the movie. And then I said to myself, okay, you know, he's he's got to have somebody. He's got to have somebody close to him. He's got to have somebody close to him that um, that he can relate to. Somebody. I think that I need somebody to tell their story of Derek through their own eyes. That vehicle. And Danny was sort of born, and I knew that, right when I gave birth to Danny, I also knew that I wanted to tell two stories at the same time, and Danny needed something to do. And so, the way these things unfold is you're just always thinking about your script. You're thinking about Derek and who is he, and you're thinking about the opening scene, and then you think about, okay, how am I going to tell this story? What is the vehicle? And then I had the paper, and then I had the principal who used to be a teacher for Derek, and now he's the principal, and he's getting ready to throw Danny out of school. And so you go out at night. I'm living in LA, and I had written three screenplays before I'd written American History X, and none of them had sold. I'd had an agent, and I was just not getting the traction that I wanted to do. And so I decided to sit down and write this script. And, you know, just as with, the writing The Republic and writing every other screenplay that I've ever worked on, it just, you'll be out at a bar, and these were the days before cell phones. You couldn't just speak into a voice recorder, and I'd be in the corner, I'd be talking to a girl 1 minute and leave her and go off and write on napkins with a pen. I'd borrow a pen from the bartender and write on six napkins, and I would shove them into my pocket, and I would go out drinking with the boys, and I would wake up in the morning, and I wouldn't I lots of it I wouldn't even remember, that I'd written down. So then you pull your napkins out of your pocket the next morning and you look at it, and a third of it is good and two-thirds of it is dog shit. But, that was the unveiling of Danny. That was the unveiling of Sweeney. That was the unveiling of Murray, the mom, giving all the characters starting the names with the D, you know? And then also, you mentioned the dad. I didn't, I wasn't sure where I was going to go with that, because I have a scene with with Derek, and his dad's just been killed, and he's talking to the news reporter. And so later on, I go, okay, here we have to do a flashback at the very end where we meet the dad. This is the big reveal, and this is where it all stems from. And and Derek, and it's the tragedy of it all. Derek likes this teacher, and he's talking about this assignment, and he likes it, and his dad just totally deflates him, with, we see the racism, and I just felt that that was just the powerhouse home run flashback that kind of encapsulates everything. The Republic came out of an idea of sort of, I I was fascinated by 7 Days in May, and I wanted to do something along the lines of a a coup, or a dictatorship or something. And I originally had it in the fragility of democracy. I originally had it in my head as a TV show, and I started drafting up a pitch for that, but that was going nowhere fast. And then I just kind of got out of it for a while. And then after reading, I read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, and I thought about doing something. I was fascinated by dictators. I was fascinated by how do they rise to power? How do they, I mean, when you think about it, and it doesn't have to be racist or anything like that. It's all about, to me, it's all about, how do they do it? And how do they go about their rise to power, and why do they do it, and what's inside their head? And this goes back to, you know, that big character. And so uh um I had an idea about a colonel, and once again his son, and I thought that that could be the ultimate father son story, especially from the perspective of Julius Caesar and his stepson Augustus. And so I wanted to make it Shakespearean, and I just thought that was the original concept for the Republic. And then I read The Rise and Fall, and then I read It Can Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis, because I was doing research on Sinclair Lewis for another project that I was working on. And I said to myself, David, write a fucking book called The Republic. And that's where it all, and then I just really started to put all of it together, and the same process that I did for, American History X and Blow and Get Carter and all those other movies that I ever SWAT and battled. And you just build, and you slowly build. Now, I'd never written a novel before, and that was new. And when coming out of the screenwriting world, which is interesting, is you always think that these novelists can just go on forever and write whatever the hell they want, and it's going to be 180,000 words and all that. And I learned pretty quick, no, these novelists, their novels are not 180,000 words. Their novels are 80,000, 75, 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 words, and you can't have a ton of fat, as you well know. And so I wrote this big long manuscript, and then I did a hell of a lot of cutting, and I hired a great editor named Randall Klein. And I'll tell you what, he really helped me. I mean, writing that first, you know, the first novel and getting it right, and especially something this ambitious, and he helped me out a lot. And I think that I've created something pretty special.